podcast is a production of the Rantboard Network, your source for everything virtual wrestling. Airing live and direct from Rantboard Network Studios, it's the RBN RANTCAST. Now, your host, Jeff Santos of the Southwestern Wrestling Federation.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of the RBN RANTCAST. I am your host, the voice of the Southwestern Wrestling Federation, Jeff Santos, and I am joined by panelists Goldash from the URWL.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Once again, it is great to be back and great to have you back as well.
Thank you, sir. The voice from RPW.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm happy to be here.
And of course, my boss, Jackie Blue from the Southwestern Wrestling Federation.
Thank you, Jeff. And what an absolute pleasure it is to be back.
It is indeed. It is indeed. Gentlemen, lady, glad everyone could make it in today. We want to start things off with a quick update from the RBN community. The third edition of Community Countdown, great success. Most votes in the history of the show. I joined The Voice on co-hosting duties, and I must say it was an absolute pleasure. What did y'all all think of it?
I know I had an excellent time running down those top community matches on the RBN Community Countdown, and it was great to finally get in the booth with you. I know you and I hadn't met in person yet at that point, so it was great to sit down and watch some great virtual wrestling on play in front of us.
Always great to meet a professional colleague.
Exactly.
And not only that, guys, but you have to realize this top 5 countdown showcased the best that the RBN community has to offer, certainly growing, certainly expanding, and it was certainly an entertaining night of virtual wrestling action. I know the match that had the number 1 spot, the TCW Asterisk main event of Ichiban Valiance, BB Disco, and Hijo del Reyes. I mean, it was an absolute instant classic and a match that will certainly have ramifications not only throughout this year, but probably throughout the entire history of the Rantboard Network. And you got to give a lot of credit to that match, but don't forget there's 4 other matches on that countdown that are unique in their own ways, and 5 different promotions that certainly give, you know, all of our fans the opportunity to see great virtual wrestling content from all around the community, and certainly a lot of philosophies as well.
Yeah, I think the great thing about it is you get to see all those different perspectives on one genre, and it really helps you sort of get like a wider view of what each individual promotion can bring to the sport.
Let's not forget that we actually were able to live stream this event, and so I think that is a fantastic venue that we've been able to have now going in with a lot of our shows, and is a great chance for us to be able to interact with all the fans. So by all means, I just want to make a note that everybody should try. If we've got a live stream, get in there and say hi, make yourself known, introduce yourself. We absolutely enjoy being there with the fans and hearing what you have to say.
And once again, Jackie, thank you very much for not saying our fabulous web address for those live streams. It is hitbox.tv/Rantboard Network. Once again, hitbox.tv/Rantboard Network. Jackie, next time, please bookmark that and make sure that the fans know when you're trying to promote it.
Oh, I know, but that's your job. I'm just here to...
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Now let's move on.
Yes. Once again, as Goldash stated, what was that address again?
Hitbox.tv/.
You can also check out rantboard.net for any new community events as they happen. Now, on to the affiliates. We would like to start with the SWF, of course, but we have a brief update from Devil, who is currently traveling around the country looking at talent to expand the WWR's already loaded roster, and according to him, the WWR is going through a restructuring and will reboot next year. So, you know, Goldash, we'll start with you. What are your thoughts on the restructuring? What could that possibly mean?
You know, Jeff, I think this is certainly a turning point for the WWR promotion. I've spoken with Devil personally, and he assures me that there will be a top-to-bottom reevaluation of World Wrestling Revolution. And I think, Jeff, that certainly at this point, the WWR has nowhere to go but up. So I have a feeling that with this restructuring in place, the sky is definitely the limit for WWR, and I think everyone here should support Devil in his endeavors, and we wish nothing but the best for Devil. Hopefully the next episode of RANTCAST or RANTCASTs in the future, he'll let us know what the status is with the WWR and where everything's going, how everything's been, and where things will go.
And I, for once, have to agree with Goldash. I'm really excited to see this for Devil and for WWR. And to be honest, I'm just glad that his focus is turning back on his own organization instead of spewing animosity towards other people. I'm just really excited, and I hope this is a positive thing for him.
I think the important thing to remember about the WWR is that at one point they were possibly one of the most prominent of the RBN affiliates. I mean, this was an organization that garnered thousands and thousands and thousands of views for their productions on YouTube. So they certainly have fallen on some difficult times in recent years, but to be able to bring them back to major prominence, I think, is not only an important step for their organization, but could, again, reflect so positively on the RBN community as a whole.
Indeed, we look forward to seeing the WWR return under the guidance of Devil, and will be a good day for the RBN and a good day for Call Wrestling in general. Now, most recently, the Southwestern Wrestling Federation released 2 shows. First was the latest edition of Extra on Rantboard Weekend, which saw Rey Unido defeat Chaz DeHonage in the Sure Shot tournament. Then Revenge had a bombshell of its own to relate to the Sure Shot with the summary disqualification of John Purtle in PG-13. This essentially means Rey Unido gets a free pass, but his 2 potential opponents have to survive one more match. That's going to happen on episode 21. The Voice, we'll start with you this time. Who do you think is going to win between Valderez and Pouncey?
I'm afraid I'm going to have to go with the white-haired man of Pouncey. I think he's been passionate in his efforts and is certainly well-deserving of the win.
Goldash, how about you?
Voice, I do have to disagree because while Pouncey has certainly seen a resurgence in his confidence, there's still a lot that he hasn't done. And there's still a lot of improvement that he needs to show. He can go around saying that, he's going to have his mind games moment, as you saw in Extra during that very uncomfortable promo that was aired. But this power couple getup, it's all fine and good, but he needs to translate that into victories in the ring. And a man he hasn't been able to answer all season is Juan Valderez. And I'm going to go with the law of averages here, Jeff. I think that Juan Valderez has been effective in all of his matches against Pouncey. Pouncey has a lot to fight for. He has a lot to be confident about, but he needs to translate that in the ring and not on the microphone. I think I'm going Juan Valderez with this one.
The law of averages is one thing, but there's always those intangibles, and I think it's important to remember that mind games is that intangible.
I certainly have a point, but you know me. I have experience with people who are great on the microphone, but don't translate that into the ring. So, with Corey Jones, as you saw in Dark Horizon, I mean, granted, Ms. Blue's pet here came along and even the odds, so Jones couldn't get the victory, but still, I mean, even with Mike Kazar in the match, I don't think Corey Jones could have done it. So if you saw what happened at Dark Horizon, if Pouncey saw what happened at Dark Horizon, he would place more of his attention in the ring trying to win the match cleanly instead of saying that he and Carmen Madison are going to take over the SWF. And I know Jackie Blue has a lot to say about that, considering she's the one that essentially put Pouncey in the parking lot when his girlfriend was getting eviscerated in the ring.
That's all well and good, and I'm sure we're going to get to that, but I think you're getting a little ahead of yourself. I mean, focusing here on the Sure Shot tournament, it is always been one of my favorite parts since we've introduced it into the Mind Games mix-up. And specifically, look at what I've had to do now with John Purtle and PG-13. These 2 men have an unrivaled animosity towards each other. And I have actually, this match, the reason I did it is because it's going to be an unsanctioned match. I don't want any part of it. SWF doesn't want any part of it. They're going to be anywhere, all over the building. They're going to beat the hell out of each other, whether I say so or not. So I'm going to allow that to happen. And as far as I'm concerned, they interrupted my show with their petty personal problems. So the 2 of them can now settle it the way they want to on the grandest stage, Mind Games, and we can all move forward. Yes, that does give Rey Unido a step forward without having to face another opponent. I understand that, but we've seen a lot from the rookie, and I feel like he's going to have a really good match against either Valderez or Pouncey. But we've just seen so much from him, and I see so much potential there that I think this is still going to end up being a really great match, and I don't think it's been hampered. In fact, I think the Mind Games card has been enhanced by having the PG-13 and John Pirtle match.
Miss Blue, you just alluded to the next point I was going to make, which was the PG-13 Pirtle match, but you didn't actually answer the question posed to the group. Who do you think is going to win between Pouncey and Valderez?
Well, thank you, Jeff. That is a good point. If I had to put something out there, I'd honestly lean towards Valderez. Once again, shockingly enough to agree with Goldash, it's really more about, Pouncey's head doesn't seem to be in it. It seems to be worried about what everyone else is thinking about him and what's going on with Carmen and being a power couple. And I mean, I would love to see more out of Mr. Pouncey. I've seen more out of Mr. Pouncey in the past. I think that it's going to be a tough, match for him, but I think we're looking at Valderez pulling out the win.
Think about it, though. This culminates a story between two men that have essentially had a war all season long. And if you think about it, there's that one ominous force in the background that Mr. Valderez has to focus on, and that's Kirby. I think that little extra incentive, that little extra inspiration to get away from the monster known as Kirby, that could mean the difference in this match. Juan Valderez is going to be wrestling a little bit scared, but he's also going to be a little bit more focused. However, knowing that this is the SWF, even if they don't cross paths at Mind Games 8, I don't know, Valderez might not be out of the water, because if he holds that sure shot contract, well, the X is going to be right on his forehead. So, if he ends up winning the sure shot, if he advances, he might have to cross paths with Kirby eventually.
And the SWF fans would definitely like to see that. Moving on, we spoke about Pirtle and PG-13, non-sanctioned match at Mind Games 8. Pirtle looking for revenge against PG-13 and put him out at Uncivil Dispute. One would argue he's gotten it in the several times he's shown up since then, costing PG-13 a shot at the SWF title twice. And arguably a third time by getting him put out of the Sure Shot tournament after their brawl on episode 20. But who do you guys think is going to pull out this one? And really, what does it mean? Because both men are not great at Mind Games, so what would a victory at the big event mean? Goldash, we'll start with you.
You know what, Jeff? I'm going to go with the king himself. John Pirtle has a lot to fight for. And here's a man who's been out most of the season. He might have made mistakes in the past. Jackie Blue might know it very well. However, the king is one of the best in the SWF for a reason. He shows up to those big events. He might not be successful at Mind Games, but he knows what kind of match he's getting into. He's been there before. He did it before, and he'll do it again. And I think that PG-13, after taking Pirtle out earlier on in the season, I don't know if he realizes what kind of force he's up against. They don't call him the king for nothing.
It can be argued that I don't want to see either of these men win this match because, look, John Pirtle has tried to run me over with a car, and last year, PG-13 used a car and blew it up trying to end Michael Kazar's career, and I'm just saying both of the men are extremely volatile, but if I had to say one way or the other, I don't really want to see John Pirtle winning, so I'd really prefer to see PG-13 pick up the win, and I think it could do a lot of good for PG-13's career, provided that he can get his head on straight.
And Voice, what are your thoughts on the match?
Pirtle is king as far as I'm concerned. He's called that for a reason, as Goldash alluded to earlier. And his talents, his abilities, everything about that man screams, main event, top tier talent, marquee guy. Unfortunately, the difference is what we're talking about. Who would I like to see pick up a win versus who do I think is actually going to pick up the win. I would like to see Pirtle, but unfortunately, I think PG-13, as much as it pains me to say this, I think PG-13 is in his headspace. I think the injury was a huge setback, and while Pirtle has maybe come back to 100% physically, I think in order for him to get back to where he was mentally, I'm not 100% sure that that's where he is. So I'm going to go with PG-13.
All right. Well, now the match that many people are looking forward to has got to be the big career versus title match between Daniel Santoy and Mike Kazar. Santoy, perfect 7-0 at Mind Games, but Kazar's not really a slouch with a record of 2-1, including a win in his Mind Games debut at Mind Games 5. The first thing you'd have to bring up, though, is the friendship between these men. But did we see the last of that in episode 20? Miss Blue?
Well, my first instinct would be to say no comment. This match shouldn't even be happening. But seeing as it may be inevitable, although I don't know that that's necessarily true yet, what choice did Daniel have? Did you see? I think we all saw what Mike Kazar did. He blatantly speared my son off that apron. And everybody's like, oh, he tripped. It was an accident. I don't buy that. Not even for 1 second. I think that Mike Kazar has gotten a taste of the limelight and he can't get over it. And I think he's going to try and bulldoze my son and his career to get what he wants, which is to be on top. And he doesn't care what he ruins in that process. Everything that he had built with Daniel, everything that had come together, I just can't even begin. I don't know where to start with this, except that I'm not happy with the stipulation. Daniel obviously did not pass that by me. And I will say this. The only thing I can put out there to try and be the bigger person in this situation is that I'm right now, and I can go on record, I absolutely promise, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that Damage will not be involved in this match before, during, or after whatsoever.
Well, Jackie, it certainly seems that you don't support mutual respect in any way, shape, or form because, in my opinion, the Hollywood Heartbreakers are one of the most important tag teams in the history of the Southwestern Wrestling Federation. I believe there's still a lot of mutual respect between these two competitors. Now, you saw that handshake, if you'd like to call it that, at the end of the Hollywood Heartbreakers tag team match against the number one contenders of Smokin' Aces back on episode 20. I understand Daniel Santoy walked away and kind of slapped the hand of Mike Kazar as he walked out of the ring. I don't see that as Daniel being envious or angry at Mike. I mean, friendships go through this. Friendships are supposed to be rocky. They're not supposed to be perfect. They're not supposed to be a storybook, everything's perfect soulmate type relationship here. Friends have arguments. And I think Daniel was motivated by the heat of the moment to walk out of that ring in the way he did. But at the end of the day, they may be friends. This match may be a mutually respectful contest, but these two men are some of the biggest competitors. Emphasis on the word competitor, Jackie, in SWF history. And they are going to come into that ring at Mind Games 8 in the main event with 100,000 in attendance and give it all they have. But at the end of the day, I think friendship is going to win out. These two men have a ton of respect for one another. Daniel mentored Mike. Mike took that advice and turned it into a very successful SWF championship run. So I think they're very grateful for one another. I don't think Mike Kazar has any ulterior motive.
And I understand, okay? Obviously, what's going on with Daniel Santoy hits a little close to home with you, Ms. Blue. But, at the end of the day, I don't see it as Mike Kazar, trying to worm his way into the limelight or trying to, keep himself, the more relevant of the two. Daniel Santoy has been, the top, one of the measuring stick personalities and athletes in the SWF for a long time. It's not like he wasn't doted, he wasn't tricked into putting his career on the line. That's a decision that he's made, and after 7 career victories, I think it's his decision to make. And I think that, if he was going to get beat by anybody, if he was going to lose his career by anybody, shouldn't it be by somebody who we know he respects, who we know he has a history with, rather than a match, full of backhanded, maneuvers or cheating or by some competitor that he doesn't respect at all.
That's all well and good. But let's just point out a couple things. Goldash wants to say that I don't believe in mutual respect. I think I just put my amount of respect out there for my son to say that I'm not going to get involved in this match because I respect him. No, I do not respect Michael Kazar, not after what he's done. He's been like a second son to me. He has been that close to Daniel all this time. I've had nothing against the Hollywood Heartbreakers. I've had nothing against Michael Kazar until what we just saw last week. I feel like it's gotten to his head. I feel like he's starting to get a little big for himself. And now, yes, Daniel wasn't goaded into this. He made this choice all on his own. And I've been able to pride myself as a mother for a very long time in raising an independent-minded son. I have no problem with that. My concern is that everything he has worked for, everything that he has accomplished, he is about to throw away because of some point that he feels like he has to prove. To who? To who? Because it's not to me, and to the fans, I don't think that matters. What? No, it's to Michael Kazar. He wants to be able to prove that he can go against Michael Kazar. Well, maybe Mike needs to take a step back and look and see what this is doing to his best friend, instead of being selfish and saying he has to have this moment. He wants to have this against Daniel Santos.
Oh, don't give me that crap, Jackie. Don't give me that crap, because we saw it on SWF Extra during the whole RBN versus SWF angle. Daniel came into your office and he requested that he have a match with Jason Brigade that night. And you thoroughly refused, saying that he couldn't be involved. But since he's a competitor, he wants to be involved in that situation. He wanted to put himself in that match. And he felt, Jackie, may I remind you, that you were judging him as well. So being the professional that he is, he put himself in that situation. You can't make his decisions for him. He put himself into a situation. Granted, he lost, but if not for PG-13, he probably would have had a mutual respectful showing against Jason Brigade. Now, you're saying that he's your son. He's the one that you built the company around. I understand that. He's an icon, a legend, and a Hall of Famer. But you have to realize, Jackie, that your son is an independent man. If you want to raise an independent man, if you wanted him to be an independent thinker, you should respect his requests more often. And if he wants to do this for the sake of his career, if he wants to do this to prove himself to the rest of the SWF and the virtual wrestling world, I say let him do it and stay out of his affairs.
It comes off as a little overprotective. That's all I'm saying. And I think that's the point that we're just trying to make.
And I can absolutely appreciate that. But I'm going to turn around and make the point that, like you've all said, he's there in the heat of the moment. Maybe he's not making the best decisions. And it's not just as his mother, but as the general manager. And what's best for the SWF is that Daniel Santos remain in the SWF. And he doesn't need to be putting anything on the line to prove anything to anyone. He is not thinking clearly. He's hot-headed. It's the exact same reason I did not want him in that match against Jason Brigade, because he needed to be focused on mind games. He needed to be focused into going into that match clear-headed and to be able, because he won the high stakes match. Anybody forget
but
that?
He also had to defend his spot at Dark Horizon against PG-13. He needed to be focused toward that match as well. So you're thinking you're almost taking it a little bit too far, because being the competitor, Jackie, the competitor that he is, he wants to fight for now. He wants to fight for today. Every match is one step further. If he's looking too far ahead, he might not have been as successful as he's been. So he wants to take it match per match and do the best he can every match he can.
But it's my job to look at the big picture. End of discussion.
Well, that will certainly be a match to remember in the Mind Games annals. Will Kazar be able to hand Santos his first loss at Mind Games? We don't know, but we will certainly find out in Dallas. Right now, I'm going to put you all on the spot. We've talked about these matches. What other matches are you guys looking forward to at Mind Games 8? Goldash, we'll start with you.
Well, if there's one match that hasn't gotten the amount of coverage that I would have liked, I can maybe point the finger toward Jackie here. It's because of the Femme Division Tag Team title match between the Hellcats, Naomi Gonzalez and Morgan McGinnis, against the Wild Roses, Animation, and Molly Rose. Part of that may be that Jackie Blue is sending her agenda over to SWF HQ and telling the guys in the production truck, not to air those video packages, not to hype up the Femme Division tag team match that has certainly been building for quite a long time here. You saw at Dark Horizon, Naomi Gonzalez, an imposing physical presence against Animation. I mean, those two had an absolute war, and you saw, what Naomi Gonzalez is capable of. She, to use a phrase, is scary as hell. And Animation stood up to her, didn't take her underhanded tactics for granted, and came away with the victory. However, on episode 20 of SWF Revenge, Molly Rose tried to do the same to Naomi Gonzalez, and, she had a great fight. I mean, don't get me wrong, she almost had a career-making performance. And it was an excellent contest, but Naomi Gonzalez came out with the upper hand, and, the Hellcats are going into Mind Games 8 with a ton of momentum. And don't forget about Morgan McGinnis, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, she's the first woman in SWF history to hold the Femtag titles with more than one partner. She was also one half of the first Femtag champions. Now, going back to why this match hasn't been getting much coverage, don't forget that earlier on in the season, Jackie Blue basically called out the entire Fem division and even stripped the Fem Tag Team Champions of their titles to prove whatever point she had. And I think that her turn at Dark Horizon was almost foreshadowed in that confrontation with her Fem division, especially with the Fem Tag Team Champions. So I'm not sure why this match isn't getting more coverage, but it may be because of the scheming of your prestigious general manager, Jeff.
Oh, yes, because it's always about what I'm doing and all of my schemes and plots and plans. Goldash, you are paranoid.
Not as much as you. I'm sorry. Not as much as a woman who interrupts the match of the year just to force her little pet damage into the fray to guarantee a match. I mean, yeah, what you said about Mike Kazar in the last segment, that comes as no surprise to me after that night. Never mind. But I know we have to move on, Jeff. Might as well. Yes,
let's move on. I do agree, though, that match will be one to watch. Voice, what are you thinking looking at the Mind Games card?
One of the matches that I know I'm definitely looking forward to as we head towards Mind Games 8 is the Devlin Hunter versus Sam Bratton for the Hardcore Championship. I'm a big fan of Sam Bratton, the multi-time SWF champion and Hardcore champion. A lot of speculation about, he's very much the veteran in this situation, very much the veteran in this match. How many years left after being such a corner post of the SWF? How many years left are on his career? And I think that he's got a lot to prove to himself, to the locker room, to the fans. And I think that, this is going to be one of those matches where, he has an opportunity to prove that. And I mean, it's a hardcore championship match, but we know that there's, a specific match stipulation that has yet to be announced. So, I mean, it's going to be a brutal match one way or the other because of the hardcore rules, but then they're going to add something onto it. And I think sort of, that's to the credit of you, Miss Blue, to, sort of keep these sort of options out there, and say, well, we know it's going to be a hardcore championship match, but we want to add more to that match to make it even more exciting and, sort of keep the fans on edge. So, I'm interested to see what's going to develop there, in terms of, is it going to be a hardcore championship cage match or something? You know what I mean? And there's weapons in the ring, and they need to climb out, or who knows?
But Voice, you have to keep in mind that Sam Bratton may not be the same competitor that he was after his brutal Inferno match with Kirby last season. I mean, you have to think that Sam Bratton, he's a Hall of Famer, 3-time hardcore champion, 3-time SWF champion. But he might not be the same, especially against, the embodiment of the SWF youth movement, in my opinion, Devlin Hunter.
Oh, that's a solid point. I mean, and that's part of what I think is the allure of the match, is you tune in to see, is this guy in the twilight of his career, or is there still plenty of gas in the tank?
Speaking to that possible stipulation, Miss Blue, do you have, can we get any sort of clue as to what that stipulation might be?
Well, I'd like to say I appreciate the nod from the Voice for my choice in keeping this a surprise. And it is as much for the fans as it is for Sam Bratton and Devlin Hunter, because I think both of them not knowing what it's going to be keeps them on an even playing field, because everybody wants to talk about whether Hunter's got the, advantage because he's the younger guy, and whether Bratton's got the advantage because he is the veteran who has been there more times. I wanted to even the playing field completely. And if neither man knows what the stipulation is until right before their match at Mind Games 8, then neither one of them know exactly what to prepare for, which means they've got to really increase their preparation and be ready for absolutely anything. So being a hardcore match, you can definitely expect a lot of violence, but other than that, that's all I can say.
All right, and keeping the conversation with you, Miss Blue, what match is the general manager looking forward to the most from Mind Games 8?
Well, I would think that would be obvious. It's not like I have much of a choice, but it's going to be my son, Daniel Santoy, and Michael Kazar.
We've talked about that already. How about one of the other matches? Out of the other matches, what are you looking forward to?
If you insist, Jeff. Let's just look at what Goldash was saying about me holding back the SWF Femme division. Maybe you're not aware of this, but I actually qualify as part of the SWF Femme division. Yes, because as much as you want to talk about how I'm not a competitor, at Mind Games 2, I took on Rebecca Newcomb to have complete control of the SWF. So let me just remind you that I count myself among these women in some small capacity. So no, I'm not holding them back. What I am doing is holding them to a higher standard. I am tired of catty girls hitting each other and pulling each other's hair and making it about petty, stupid arguments and ruining the show. They need to focus on being a higher level competitor and being exactly what all of us expect. And two women that I can guarantee that we're going to see that from is Jennifer Baxter and Carmen Madison. So let me dispel also that I had nothing to do with what Jennifer Baxter had done to Carmen Madison. I had to make a decision about Mr. Pouncey. He was running his mouth and writing checks that his body couldn't cash, pretty much. I was tired of hearing it. And then you put on top of that he refuses to apologize. He refuses to put his pride aside and do what he knew was right. So I removed him from the building. Jennifer Baxter is her own brand of crazy, and I can't even understand what goes through her mind. But I will say that she made the choice to capitalize on that moment and attack Carmen when she was most vulnerable. And so it feels only correct, only right, that Carmen should have the opportunity at Mind Games, which she was the rightful number one contender to the SWF Femme Division Championship. She was going to be the number one contender going to Mind Games, and she forfeited that moment to be able to turn around and have this match with Jennifer Baxter and put this to bed once and for all. So who am I to keep that from the fans or anyone else, or to keep the Femme division down?
Well, if you want to hold the Femmes to a higher standard, why don't you do anything about Jennifer Baxter?
I believe that I just covered that that's going to be taken care of at Mind Games 8, because she's going to get exactly what she deserves, which is a grudge match with Carmen Madison to put this to bed once and for all.
Oh, hey, I'm all in favor of settling in the ring, so yeah, you do have a point, I guess.
Wow. Miracles never cease.
Apparently not. Well, I guess, as I'm part of this panel as well, I'll go ahead and let myself out there a little bit. I'm looking forward to the Arcanum versus Powers match, as I have been literally since Season 2. Jason Powers has always had some sort of problem with Josh Arcanum. I'm not entirely sure what his problem is. He won't really elaborate on it, but it's good to see them, after Powers has been so instrumental in just being on Arcanum's back all season long. It's going to be nice to see them finally just get in the ring and settle things.
If you're sitting next to a guy like Jason Powers for an entire season, I mean, of course you want to see him get his comeuppance. I mean, secretly, do you really want Josh Arcanum to win, or do you see it going either way?
Once again, I don't really know. I believe Arcanum.
Come on, just say it, Jeff. Just say it. Just admit it. You want Jason Powers to get his comeuppance.
I can't say anything like that. But
Well,
I
I'll
believe
say it.
Arcanum.
I'll say it. I want to see Jason Powers get what he deserves. Absolutely. And Josh Arcanum is just the man to do it.
Hey, as long as he doesn't wear those creepy red tights again, I mean, hey, let's just see what he does. I mean, if he's really about trying to prove that he's the better man, hey, get him in the ring. I don't know, what they're going to decide. But, hey, get him in the ring with Arcanum and see what happens. I mean, sparks are going to fly. And if it's anything like the fire that Josh Arcanum provides, well, hey, we might be seeing something that defines the word ugly. Well, yeah, it might get even uglier if he decides to wear those tights again, though. Oh, man. Just puked in my mouth.
It will be a picture of violence, I'm almost certain. Arcanum's he's been pushed so far, there's really no telling what he's going to do. Now, moving on. Blockbuster announcement. Right now, SWF Mind Games 8 in Dallas, Texas will be preceded by a live pre-show on the Rantboard network where you can expect to hear, well, I guess you all can't, but the fans can expect to hear last-minute analysis of all the matches from Slick Powers, Stephen Carver, and myself, as well as the thoughts of several superstars and personalities from across the Rantboard network. Goldash, I understand you're going to be there. Voice, I'm not sure if it will be you or Rodney Xavier, but someone's going to be there for the RPW.
We'll definitely be represented in some fashion, for sure.
It's going to be an exciting pre-show, and it's also been announced the Tag Team Championship match between the Smoking Aces and the Devil Dogs will be on that pre-show. So, looking forward to that. Now, Miss Blue, I have to bring it up between you and my broadcast colleague Slick Powers on episode 20.
Do you have to, Jeff? Or is it just that Slick can't keep his mouth shut when he's supposed to, and maybe decided to put that bug in your ear? I'm just saying that Slick ran his mouth and said some things that were absolutely inappropriate and didn't need to be put out there. And certainly the RANTCAST was not the place for him to air his grievances. If he had a problem, he should have done what everybody else does and treat the door to my office like a revolving door and come in there. But seeing as he chose not to do that and he decided to go in public and air his issues there, I returned the favor and came to the middle of the ring and took care of the situation as I felt was necessary. And it didn't turn ugly, did it? No. We apologized and moved forward.
I mean, I sort of, as a man in the booth myself, I definitely, I need to agree with Miss Blue on this. I think that you never speak ill of the company you work for. You certainly don't bite the hand that feeds you. When I was listening to the last RANTCAST, I sort of, got a little uncomfortable myself, because I know if I were the one who was on the program, when I got back to RPW headquarters, Rodney and I would definitely have a conversation, and it would not be positive. Unfortunately, I do think a little bit, though, Ms. Blue, when we were talking about the ramifications of his actions, there was sort of implied physical violence that I thought was maybe a pinch over the line.
Oh, I can definitely appreciate that. And I know damage comes off as intimidating, but there's not much you can do about that when he's a bodyguard.
Well, also, to put this to rest, that's the reason why I, as a CEO, went into the booth myself. It's a smart business decision, and I can talk about whatever I feel like without any consequence. So I understand you have employees, you need to keep them in line. That's okay. But if you're in the position like me, you have the ability to say what needs to be said. And for that reason, Slick Powers will be appearing on episode 2 of URWL Live as a special guest color commentator during the #1 contendership match for the Federational Championship between Spectre and Corey Jones. As you saw on the URWL's Twitter account, it's official, ladies and gentlemen. Slick will be coming to the URWL for one night only. And believe me, Jackie, it's going to be a place where his talents will be respected like they deserve to be.
Absolutely. I think he is absolutely phenomenal at his job when he is focused on doing his job. And so that's why I proved I'm the bigger person. And in the live stream, I gave permission to Slick Powers, despite our closed door policy right now. I gave him permission to go on to URWL and to be a color commentator for one night only. So I think that there's not a problem there. I just said, I believe, what are the words I'm looking for? Mutual respect?
Okay, well, as you stated, Slick Powers to join Goldash in the booth of episode 2 of Live. But before we get to episode 2 of Live, let's talk about Roughness. URWL Roughness made its grand premiere just a few weeks ago. An excellent event, if I say so myself. But Goldash, what do you have to say about the events of Roughness?
Well, Roughness was indeed a success, Jeff, and it kicked off in grand fashion with the return of the newest URWL signing, the White Tiger, Matt Thompson. Now, Thompson kicked off the event against Brent Steele, a talent from the Rantboard Network community, and thank you very much to 16-Bit Wrestling for allowing us to use Mr. Steele. As you know, Mr. Steele was once part of the Fusion Pro promotion, and he is one of the cornerstones of the growing Rantboard Network community. Now, Steele and Thompson put on one hell of a match, and I believe that with Matt Thompson's victory, the URWL, as I said, is now in the proverbial eye of the tiger. Because Matt Thompson, you saw back in 2009, when he was a trainee here in the URWL, he took Corey Jones, the man that we all are familiar with here, to the limit. And if it wasn't for Corey's last-second legit 450, Matt Thompson would have pulled off the greatest upset in URWL history. I mean, a trainee going out and being the former undefeated high-flyer champion was certainly a big accomplishment. However, it didn't happen. Matt Thompson went to the VWA, he went to Japan, he went all over the world, but came back home to the URWL, and it was certainly a big match for Mr. Thompson.
Goldash, I did have a question about that. Brent Steele being an RBN community wrestler coming into the URWL, is that something we can expect to see, going forward just every once in a while?
Yeah, it's certainly not out of the realm of possibility. The RBN is all about that mutual competition, and both men had a mutually respectful contest. And, if other members of the community want to come around, just talk to us. We'll see what we can do. And, those independent contractors out there in the community, you know who you are. If you want to be a part of future shows, if the plans are there, if the spot is there, then by all means get in touch with us and we'll see what we can do.
Indeed, it resulted in a wonderful match for Roughness, but I still have to tip my hat to Shane B. Perkins taking on Scorpion. That was just an absolute insane match. What do you have to say about that one? Well,
I'm not too happy with the man known as Shane B. Perkins. I mean, Shane has the biggest ego, or at least one of them, because, the URWL is full of them, but Shane has to be right up there. I mean, he's a man who is totally ungrateful for the support of his mentor, Barry White, and he is going out and trying to be everything that the 18-time URWL champion is not, Jeff. And I think that this match against an equally important veteran in the URWL's history, Scorpion, well, he certainly proved that. If he wants to tear through the URWL roster just to get a shot at his former mentor down the road, well, he's certainly doing it right now, and that effort, I mean, I don't like the man, but the effort he put in was enough to turn probably the entire promotion's heads. Not even that, but the entire virtual wrestling world itself. Shane B. Perkins, sky's the limit. Scorpion, once again, kind of enigma in the URWL's history. A man that keeps losing, but keeps building that fan support. It's certainly interesting to see, but, every time he loses, it seems the fans love him even more.
Indeed. And now to a match that I believe, as I was watching it, caused a fair amount of controversy, and that was Fusion and Jamie Emo, again, a polarizing figure of the URWL. It seems full of them. Defeats Salvatore and Interrogative. First your thoughts on that match, but almost more importantly, the aftermath of that match.
Well, Jeff, two men who certainly have a lot of respect for one another is the URWL champion and his number one contender. But you mentioned that aftermath, and it made me sick to my stomach, Jeff. And I absolutely hated the way Interrogative carried on, but you can't say this wasn't a long time coming. This man has I hate to use the phrase, neutered ever since Salvatore came in. I mean, he's kind of made a monster into, more of a strategic plotting wrestler. That's not his style. Interrogative loves violence. And it seems as if all that violence, all that rage was absolutely repressed for weeks and weeks. And Salvatore suffered a nearly career-ending injury, or at least a series of them, at Interrogative's hands. I mean, you saw it. Because of that, Salvatore's lawyers and the URWLs met and decided to release Salvatore, the veteran and former URWL champion, through an injury settlement. Now, this injury settlement will be paid for through Interrogative's own contract. Now, if that isn't disciplinary action, I don't know what is. But this is a man who has gone completely off the rails. And, however, there was one man in the arena that night, Mr. Voice, that certainly was a unadvertised guest. Yes. At RBN Studios, there's a lot of different talent milling around from different leagues, but Andrew Drazen had a front row seat. What was that all about?
Your guess is as good as mine. Rodney and I were not at RBN Studios. We were back home here in Milwaukee, and we were watching just like any other fan from the community. We were watching the stream, and like you said, you can be at RBN Studios, you can be at the RBN headquarters and see any number of wrestlers, there doing any kind of promotional work or, working on contract negotiations, anything. And I certainly didn't know Andrew was going to be there, and neither did Rodney. So all of a sudden, here he comes in for your match, sits down in the front row. I mean, I'm just as surprised as you. I don't know what that was all about.
Well, hopefully we got a little bit of light shed on that over on Redline 14. But, it came as a surprise to me. I mean, thankfully he left without any altercations. We don't know who he was targeting in that match. I mean, could it be Fusion based on the events of the Fusion versus Garstecki match? Could it have been anybody else? Jamie Emo even. We don't know that. So we'll see what happens.
Now, with all of that, we turn our attention to the next episode of Live. And in what seems like a trend for these rantcasts, we can't talk about URWL without talking about Corey Jones, the man who has been at the forefront of the legitimate wrestling revolution. I can't even believe I just said that. Once again, finds his way into the spotlight in a number one contendership match. But before that, he's going to have a lot to explain. Goldash, if you want to elaborate on that.
Yes, and you saw at the end of episode 1 of URWL Live, Corey Jones added another sycophantic follower to his legion of legitimate wrestling, if you will. And that is actually a surprising figure. Not a man who's looking to work his way up and find attention, but an established competitor in the undefeated and new URWL Federational Champion, Alexander Kuleshov. Now, I understand. Jackie, you may put me on blast if you will. I'm ready to take it. The fact that Corey Jones is in a number one contenders match against Spectre for a championship his ally currently holds, look at the size disparity. Look at the fact that Spectre and Kuleshov have been going at one another for weeks now. I mean, going back to Unrivaled Ambition, these two men have almost randomly crossed paths. I mean, they're going to have to fight one of these days. Spectre has a lot going for him, but Corey Jones, with the power of his almighty microphone, he's going to be in our opening segment. And he's going to address or explain at least what's going to happen or what did happen on episode 1 of Live to the audience in attendance. And, I begrudgingly gave him the time to explain himself. But it wasn't without reason. And I know, Jackie, I know you want to raise your voice. I understand. But, what happened on your program is all said and done. You took care of it.
You're right. I did.
Well, I'm not thanking you for what you did, but you took care of it. Now he's back home. I don't know. The man is completely off the rails. His legitimate wrestling revolution, his legitimate wrestling mindset, and it's been very familiar to all of you, I understand. But Corey Jones has a lot to prove and a lot to explain, and he'll do that on Live.
I'm glad to see you're handling it there in-house. That's all I ever wanted. So I'm not complaining about your choices. I find it ironic considering how much you railed on me for choosing to do that same thing. And what it sounds like to me, if I might add, is that you're basically putting Corey Jones out there as bait for anybody who wants to come out and take a bite out of him, which, hey, it's his choice if he wants to come out there and put himself in that situation. But you can't say that, in me doing that in the situation that I had to deal with was wrong when you're doing the exact same thing.
And believe me, Jackie, lightning will not strike twice. If Corey Jones is alone in the ring and Spectre comes out, a veteran, a towering presence, he's going to get his ass beat. That's it. That's all I'm going to say.
Also for that match, as we stated before, Slick Powers joining you on commentary for the Corey Jones versus Spectre match. We know my broadcast colleague has had his issues with Corey Jones before.
Who knows? Might even be Slick Powers charging the ring to set Corey straight in that opening segment. Who knows?
That would be something, wouldn't it?
Well, he almost got in the ring. I'm sure he would have held his own with Corey Jones.
Indeed, had Mike Kazar not come in and diffuse the situation in his own way. That the first part of a double main event. The second part, number one contendership, Fusion versus Seth Stern, who, I just keep mentioning polarizing figures in the URWL. But not only that, URWL champion Jamie Emo, who is, defending the title that these two men are fighting for a chance to get at, is going to be the special referee. How do you see that going?
Well, I'll say once again, Jeff, and I've said this many times in different forms of media. I had a press conference, as you said. You can watch it anytime on the Rantboard Network. But I'll say it again. Jamie Emo controls his own destiny and the destiny of the URWL. If he really wants Seth Stern, the man who injured URWL chairman Vince Neil back in episode 1 of Live, if he really wants that man to have a chance, even the chance at winning his title at Dangerous Minds, he would stay the hell away from giving Seth Stern any type of pinfall attempt or submission attempt or anything. Don't count for him. Just don't even get him close to that point. But he wants to call it down the middle. He wants to be a professional about it. I understand. It doesn't sound very professional of me telling my champion to be biased in this match. I understand. It kind of looks bad on me, but I don't really care anymore.
My God, absolutely. Everybody wants to rant and rave about what I've done. Come on. I just want to say that I really hope that Jamie Emo calls it down the middle and does what's absolutely right. Because you know what? Seth Stern is completely underappreciated. And I think that he could do a fantastic job in this match if he's given the actual opportunity. Let Jamie call it down the middle and let the chips fall where they may. Because as you've so wonderfully pointed out plenty of times, it's not your job to get in the middle of it. It's not your job to decide what Jamie is going to do, and you're sitting here trying to, force Jamie's hand one way or the other. It just sounds a little hypocritical after everything that you've been ranting at me about for months, Goldash.
Let me ask you a question, Jackie. Let me ask you a question right now. What happened on episode 1 of Live? What did Seth Stern do? Whose ribs did he break? What would happen if one of your superstars came out and did that?
Cry me a river. I've been hit by a car, okay? I don't want to hear it. Some bruised ribs versus me being in traction.
He's still in the hospital. His ribs are broken, not bruised, broken. Oh. He's out of the board meetings he's supposed to be attending. The Sterns have used this. It was strategic. They did this. Either they wanted to get what they wanted, which was Seth Stern being put into a number one contenders match to get another shot in a long line of shots at Jamie Emo's URWL championship. They've had many matches in the past. I know Jamie Emo hates Seth Stern with an untamed passion. But because of that, it was all strategic, Jackie. The Sterns wanted that to happen. They wanted him to be injured so that they would gain more control in my boardroom. And
you wonder
again,
why
I hate going into personal business matters.
Personally contracted superstar. It's things like this. This is why I have a personally contracted superstar. Maybe that's something that Vince should look into. Just saying. Then these things wouldn't happen.
If the power struggle is that real, though, I'm just saying, has anyone considered pressing formal charges against Seth Stern?
Absolutely. That's the arena that it should happen in. I mean, you always talk about how things should be settled in the ring. Well, this doesn't seem like something that should be settled in the ring. Maybe the courtroom is the better venue for that.
Do I really want my fans to be robbed of an opportunity to see some of the biggest stars in our company fight? Would I want to sacrifice the payday that will garner? Because believe me, if I had to settle this with paperwork or put cameras in there and show them fighting in the courtroom, do you think that will have the same impact as a match with this kind of implications? Jamie Emo is a champion of substance, so if he wants another rematch with Seth Stern, that's fine by me. I guess our champion really wants to put matters in his own hands, but don't forget, he controls the destiny of not only himself, but the company as well. I don't want the Sterns getting any more ammunition or getting anywhere close to the main event in Dangerous Minds. I want Fusion and Emo to repeat what they did at Unrivaled Ambition, and I want that for our fans. I want that for mutual respect and for the Rantboard Network and for each and every one of you as well, to show everyone that mutual respect will prevail. Like it or not, easy or hard, it will prevail. And that's it. Jeff, let's move on. I don't want to talk about this here.
Moving on, yes, from the veterans of the URWL who've been fighting for years to a man who has only had 2 matches and yet is being thrust into the spotlight, so to speak. Darius Gash. He's fighting for the #1 contendership to the URWL High Flyer title. That'll happen on Live. But in addition to that, he is facing Evan James of the RPW on Redline 14 in an interpromotional match. I mean, what's the thinking behind putting Darius Gash in this sort of position?
Well, now that cooler heads have prevailed and we've all decided to move on, thank you, Jeff. Darius Gash, I chose him because he matches up well with Evan James. Now, I'm not sure if there's anyone on the RPW roster that has an answer for Mr. James, because Mr. James has it in his head that he can switch weight divisions at a whim and go on and do whatever he wants because he feels like he's accomplished all he has in his division. And you know what? What about the divisions of the other RBN leagues? If he's really that adamant at making a difference, if he's really that adamant at taking his career to the next level, go up against the wrestlers of the other RBN promotions that fight for mutual respect and see what you can gain from that. I think that this is going to be an excellent match. Darius Gash, a former point guard, a former skateboarder. Wrestling was kind of a side job to him. It's not quite what Evan James had to do for, escaping his hard reality on the streets and trying to make it out of his predicament by wrestling. No, I mean, Darius Gash is sort of taken all he's learned throughout his many diverse careers in basketball and in skateboarding to get to this level. And wrestling became his main focus, after finding success earlier on in the independent circuit. Now, Darius Gash, he's a rookie. Evan James, he's a veteran. I understand that. It might be a mismatch on paper, record-wise, statistic-wise, but that doesn't matter when they get in the ring. Anything can happen on any given night in the Rantboard Network. So on RPW Redline 14, I'm going to join the voice in the booth. I'm going to make sure that Evan James gets what he deserves, and I'm going to personally see what Darius Gash is made out of, so that when he comes back to the URWL on episode 2 of Live, he'll be able to take Victor Cordaro to the limit and win the chance to face Trent Tail at Dangerous Minds for the High Flyer title.
Indeed. Evan James, I'm going to admit, a sore spot for the SWF as well. He interrupted Dark Horizon in the main event 6-man tag, attacked Kyle Andrews. Andrews returning the favor on Ground Zero at RPW. And Miss Blue, I'm sorry to say, violating the roster freeze by attacking James. Miss Blue, what are your thoughts on Andrews' retaliation?
Wow. It wouldn't be a day in the SWF if I wasn't talking about what a disappointment Kyle Andrews is. But I just want to point out, this is a good time to say that, maybe this is the exact kind of thing that I needed to prepare for, and that I needed to make sure that there was a plan in play should something like this come about. So it's a good thing I did. And now, Kyle Andrews already, we've had that kind of friction between the two of us, I guess you could say. And he wasn't even in the match when when we won. So as far as I'm concerned, right now, he's not even an active member of the roster of SWF because I have had it with him. And so right now, the only way I know how to deal with this is to say, he's suspended. And then, and that it wasn't going to be for long. It wasn't going to be a permanent thing. It was just going to be, you need to take a break. You need to take a step back because obviously, you need to reevaluate your situation. And then he has to go and do this. Then he has to go and interject himself at RPW Ground Zero and make himself a nuisance somewhere else. I've got mind games to concentrate on. So the most I can do is what I think has already been put out there on Twitter, what we've talked about. I told Kyle Andrews that because he has no match at Mind Games, he has no place at Mind Games. So he will not be allowed to be there. And that's the most I can do right now because that is the whole point of the roster freeze and our closed door policy was because we need to focus on Mind Games. And I'll go ahead and say it now. Once Mind Games is over, the roster freeze and the closed door policy will be lifted, but not before.
Can we hold you to that?
Yes.
Can we hold you to that?
Yes, that is. It's called an announcement for a reason, Goldash.
Well, you said that you are the final authority on that, it's only over when you decide it's over. How can we trust you that the day after Mind Games, all of a sudden we'll be able to let talent on your show? How do we know that you're not recovered from all that paranoia?
I've just said it. I hope you were listening. And it's been recorded for everyone else to hear. So if we need to, we can play it back.
We'll hold you to that.
But as I just said,
promise is a promise.
As I just said,
be a woman of your word, Jackie.
After Mind Games, the closed door policy and the roster freeze will be lifted, and we will carry on as normal. But right now, we have this to deal with. So Kyle Andrews will not be allowed at Mind Games. That's his punishment. As far as him going and sticking his nose in anywhere else, that's not my problem. Consequences, he gets whatever consequences befall him, that's on his own head. And it's going to have to be his problem to deal with, not mine.
Voice, what is the general feeling in the RPW locker room concerning Andrews coming in and basically putting James in his place?
Well, the RPW locker room is a very diverse place with a lot of interesting and dynamic personalities, and Evan James is certainly one of the most dynamic that we have. This is a situation where the locker room, the management, and even myself are sort of over Evan James. Evan James is it's kind of the situation where sometimes the smartest kid in class causes the most trouble. Evan James is incredibly talented, four-time light heavyweight champion, basically beaten every big name in the RPW or NWC. He's been a veteran, a stalwart performer for years, and it wasn't until Victim of Change's 2013 RPW CPV where he lost the light heavyweight championship for the fourth time to Chrome in a hardcore rules match after being suplexed through a flaming table. That really this sort of idea that he is done with the light heavyweight division started. He's bored because he is the most talented, possibly anyway, the most talented performer in Radical Pro Wrestling, that he deserves to be the face of the company. And henceforth has proceeded to blame Rodney Xavier for holding him back. He believes that because the RPW has two different weight divisions that is put in place to limit his growth and his potential. He sees the same thing with the URWL and Goldash, He thinks of the URWL as the old guard, as a dinosaur, who's ready to be extinct. And he doesn't see that, this partnership in the RBN as a good thing, because it's bringing in all these other superstars, all this other talent that, is trying to take his spot. And when he interjected himself into SWF Dark Horizon and assaulted Kyle Andrews, that was really a cry for attention by Evan James.
I saw on RPW programming leading up to the point where the RPW joined the RBN, it was almost like he was saying he was going to legitimize Radical Pro Wrestling. And I guess we didn't see the signs back then, seeing as though the Legitimate Wrestling Revolution was running roughshod over the SWF at the time. But he made it fairly clear. I mean, he used cryptic language, but it was still fairly clear. And then what he did was undermine his boss, undermine his entire company, and maybe lost the company money by running in and interrupting the match and taking that RPW announcement and essentially perverting it. Evan James did exactly what he wanted to do. He wanted everybody to see who he was on the biggest stage imaginable, and now you have this situation where Darius Gash is coming in, essentially a young member of what he thinks is the old guard, and looking to take him on inside that ring on Red Line 14.
Exactly, and I actually think that Darius Gash is the perfect, competitor to put up against Evan James, because the key to wrestling, as with any other sport, is going to be that wind. It's going to be that cardiovascular preparedness, so that when you get slammed on the mat too many times, you don't get blown up and you can't breathe. And if you can't breathe, you can't win. And I think with his background as a point guard and with his background in skateboarding and all these different career paths, all these different athletic avenues that he's been down, I think Darius Gash can compete with Evan James on the speed, on the quickness, on the agility. And I think that that's going to make for an impressive contest. And I think that he could, potentially beat Evan James fair and square right in the middle of the ring. And that's good for us, because I'm certainly tired of listening to Evan James go on and on. And it's good for Gash, because a victory over a former 4-time light heavyweight champion in Radical Pro Wrestling is going to bolster his image in his quest for the High Flyer title.
So now we are approaching Victim of Changes 2015. Several great matches already signed. Light heavyweight title on the line. World Tag Team titles on the line. And matches that are sure to be intense. What can fans look to see when RPW comes to Brooklyn?
Absolutely. We are so excited. Our first event from the Barclays Center in Brooklyn, New York. And as you mentioned, yes, the Light Heavyweight Championship match, Cannonball taking on Redeemer in a rematch. Now, there was a lot of speculation prior to this at RPW Ground Zero if Redeemer could still hold on to the Light Heavyweight championship. Now, the light heavyweight division is generally focused around guys that are going to do high flying, agility type maneuvers off the top rope. That's the predominant, style, in that division. Redeemer is sort of a standout in the fact that, he's a smaller guy, but he doesn't fly. He doesn't climb the top rope. He doesn't do these springboards. He's not flying out of the ring. He's not doing all this kind of stuff. And Cannonball is very much he's a large light heavyweight. He's just barely in the division. He's one of these guys that could sort of draw the line in between the light heavyweight and the heavyweight roster. So Redeemer earned an impressive sort of, wrestling-based victory over Cannonball at RPW Ground Zero. Cannonball had to earn his rematch. Rematches are not guaranteed in any contract in Radical Pro Wrestling. And after a series of matches to earn himself a number one contendership spot again, that match has now been signed as a traditional ladder match, which is the traditional championship defense for the light heavyweight title. So we're definitely looking forward to that match.
I mean, one of the most interesting things about this contest, Voice, is the sort of friendship that Cannonball wants to seek between himself and Redeemer. He wants to break this type of mystique that Redeemer has around him. He tried unsuccessfully at Ground Zero. It is a little bit endearing that Cannonball wants to seek this type of respect, almost a friendship between himself and this almost monstrous, enigmatic, demonic type figure in Redeemer. So, it's interesting. It reminds me of Teen Titans a little bit. I think it's an interesting type of dynamic here going on. I don't think he's gonna make friends with this, demon type character. I don't think Redeemer reminds me of Raven that much, but you know what? It's going to certainly be an interesting dynamic, and I can't wait to see what happens after this match, to be honest. I'm not sure if this is going to be a friendship. I'm not sure if this is going to lead anywhere, but you know what? Cannonball, hey, more power to him. I'd like to see a tag team, those two. You know what? It's an odd couple, but they could really make waves in this division. That could be a team that could challenge the champs.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing because Cannonball, he's just this down-home, Midwestern guy, and he's one of the friendliest people, you could run into, and he can just talk your ear off about anything. But there's this idea that, he keeps stating that, he's not scared by the red lights and the fog and the white contacts that, Redeemer's putting in every day before he's heading out to the ring. He's been very clear that, this is a man. He's not a monster. He's not a demon. He's not a possessed person. This is just a man who's putting on a facade every day before he goes out there. And he is sort of a mysterious guy. He's very, very much a loner. He travels alone. He doesn't share, the locker room. But so yes, it is definitely interesting that, Cannibal is moving in that direction to sort of try to break that persona. Another match that we're very excited about is the RPW World Tag Team Championship match between the team of Lusion Star and Tony Rabbleford. And they're taking on sort of another odd couple, speaking of odd couples, Shock and Andrew Drazen, two men that are really in a business relationship, not friends. But somehow managed to come across, the tag team titles. And this match, of course, came together because of their dominance. Shock and Andrew Drazen have run roughshod all over the tag team division. Both men, former world heavyweight champions. Both men incredibly dominant in the heavyweight division, and they have been unbeatable for every standing tag team. So eventually Rodney and I had a discussion about, how are we going to make this interesting? And we sort of came up with the idea where Rodney said, I'm just going to let them pick their next opponent because I don't really know what to do. These guys are accomplishing everything that, that's put in front of them. And this match came together because Lusion Star and Tony Rabbleford sort of pulled the old switcheroo. They approached them out of friendship, as you saw on RPW programming, gave them a bunch of beers, tried to hang out, play some cards, and then the next night, sort of talked their way into a number one contenders singles match between Shock and Tony Rabbleford, in which Lusion Star interjected himself into that match, caused a distraction. There was a big to-do outside the ring, and Tony Rabbleford managed to get the roll-up backslide victory. So that match is signed and official. Lusion Star, Tony Rabbleford taking on Shock and Andrew Drazen.
Well, you saw on Roughness, as we mentioned before, Drazen showed up interestingly on his own. I thought Shock would be there. It was a tag team match. So maybe they were looking at maybe a dream match situation between Jamie Emo and Fusion, or maybe even Salvatore and Interrogative, which didn't last very long. Right. But it would have been interesting to see both of them there, the RPW Tag Team Champions at RBN Studios for Roughness. Instead, it was only Andrew Drazen, and I wonder if Andrew's feeling, I don't want to put words in anybody's mouth here, but maybe Andrew is feeling a little bit, I would say, disappointed in what Shock didn't do. It's who's to say? I certainly don't know, and neither do you, but it is interesting. I would have thought that if we were going to see anybody from Radical Pro Wrestling would have shown up on Roughness, I would have thought it would have been the world champion Mike Anderson, who obviously has a great deal of respect for the URWL. I know, Goldash, you had a personal conversation with Mike not too long ago, and I know that he has a great deal of respect for URWL champion Jamie Emo, so I thought maybe if anybody was going to show up, it would have just been Mike Anderson, just to sort of see the champion up close, but here we had Andrew Drazen all by himself. Speaking of heavyweight champion Mike Anderson, I do have a couple of announcements for RPW Victim of Changes 2015 that I'm going to make right now. Rodney has given me the go-ahead, and the World Heavyweight Championship match has been signed. Mike Anderson will defend against new challenger Peter Mulready. Now, tensions between those two have been on the rise ever since Mike Anderson successfully defended his championship at Ground Zero, and ever since Peter ran through Shannon Powell and Justin Powell in several matches prior to this, most notably a steel cage match between Justin Powell and Peter Mulready, where both men were left in a bloody heap after it was all said and done. So Peter Mulready, sort of after doing those
those things, injecting himself into the heavyweight title picture, sort of feeling that he's entitled to that match. So that is going to be our main event of RPW Victim of Changes 2015 World Heavyweight title on the line between Mike Anderson and challenger Peter Mulready. And the other match I am going to announce here tonight is we are going to see the return of the former number one contender for the heavyweight title, Outer Limit, a man we have not seen since he was defeated by Mike Anderson, and he is going to make his return to action against Quentin Avery, our energetic Frenchman and new signee from the independent circuit. We are happy to have him back into the fold. I know given his age, he was a little concerned about being able to compete at the same level that he has, but the giant of a man has decided to give it one more go, and he's going to start that run off against Frenchman Quentin Avery. Very excited to have him back.
I don't think there was a run stopped in his match against Mike Anderson. I think the run will be continuing to go on for Outer Limit because this is a man who took the champion to the limit. I mean, no pun intended. But, Outer Limit really impressed me. He's become one of my favorites on the RPW roster. He's been an endearing competitor, a man who deserves a lot of respect for his accomplishments. He didn't win the championship, but he won a lot of hearts that night at Ground Zero. And, I can't wait to see what he does against Quentin Avery. It'll be exciting.
Yeah, and it was never a question of whether or not he could compete physically. He was cleared by medical physicians after the matches with no major sustaining injuries, but he has certainly been around for a long time. And it was really more a question of heart for him as to whether or not he wanted to continue, but he will make his return to action, and we are excited to have him. So I know he did definitely win a lot of hearts at Ground Zero.
I don't normally talk about this type of thing, but I can agree with Goldash. Outer Limit, probably my favorite superstar in the RPW ever since Ground Zero. Watched that match, absolutely loved it. Looking forward to his return, as is, I'm sure, everyone else in the RBN. Moving on, Redline 14, we've already kind of touched on it with the interpromotional match between James and Gash. Goldash will be joining Voice in the booth. Anything else?
RPW Redline is coming from Cincinnati, Ohio, the U.S. Bank Arena. And as we did talk about at great lengths, interpromotional contest between Evan James and Darius Gash. Definitely tune in for that match. You're going to see two men of similar styles, similar athletic abilities, just battling it out for respect and admiration of their fans and peers. And I'm very excited about that match. We're going to also have Philip Moore, one of our new signees from Ireland. He's going to be taking on Chronic in an exhibition heavyweight style singles match. That's going to open the show. And also our semi-main event with serious implications to RPW Victim of Changes is going to be a number one contendership match for the Women's Wrestling World Championship, and that is going to be between Quinn LaCosta and former champion Cassia Grace. Now, Cassia Grace was defeated by Devotaki in a championship match, and she is now looking to maintain that level of number one contendership against newcomer Quinn LaCosta. What's interesting, though, is that there is a little bit of history between Quinn LaCosta and Devotaki from Allure Wrestling. Both of those women, very serious competitors in that virtual wrestling league, which has now since defunct. But if Quinn can get through former champion Cassia Grace, who at one time was completely running roughshod over the women's division, it could be a very interesting match come RPW Victim of Changes.
That is a match that people are going to be looking forward to.
Yes, you never know what can happen on RPW Redline, so definitely make sure. I know that we will have RPW World Champion Mike Anderson will be in attendance to address the new signing of his championship match against Peter Mulready, so you never know what situation could unfold there.
And I'm assuming the next episode of Redline will be, as has been the case for the latest RBN events, it will be live streamed.
Our plan currently is to go live on the Hitbox channel. Yes, sir.
And Goldash, what's that address again?
That address, Jeff, is www.hitbox.tv/Rantboard Network. Please bookmark it, and that includes everyone on this panel. Thank you.
No, you did so well with that, Goldash. I'm so proud.
I just didn't want to take that away from you. I know how much you enjoy saying the
I
URL.
know, right?
I understand.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, it is time to bring this show to an end. We've got, obviously, several huge events coming up. Mind Games 8 for the SWF, Dangerous Minds for the URWL, Victim of Changes for the RPW. It is a great time to be a fan of the RBN, especially with the new live streaming. We've got live chats with every event. I personally have been part of a few of them. It's been very enjoyable. Great way to connect with our fans.
Once again, Jeff, that address is www.hitbox.tv/Rantboard Network. Thank you very much.
Yes. Always ask Goldash for the address. It's good stuff. Final thoughts from each of you. I guess, Voice, we'll start with you.
I think we've hit everything, on the head. I think it's a great time to be a fan of virtual wrestling. I think it's a great time to be a fan of the Rantboard Network, and I'm looking forward to sitting down in the booth with Goldash and watching another great interpromotional match on RPW programming, and I'm looking forward to Mind Games 8 and Dangerous Minds. I mean, it just there's so much happening right now in the RBN, and I'm thankful to be a part of it.
Not only that, but if you're looking at the next events coming up, episode 2 of Live, episode 21 of Revenge, and Redline 14.
You can't forget that we will have an episode of Extra before episode 21, because for you of all people can't forget RBN programming, Goldash.
And once again, it will be broadcasted exclusively on www.hitbox.tv/Rantboard Network. Thank you very much.
I love it.
Miss Blue, any final thoughts?
Well, just that I wanted to touch on again and make sure that everyone heard and understood that SWF, the roster freeze and closed door policy, will be lifted after Mind Games 8 officially. So you never know what kind of interpromotional matches and activities we will have going on after Mind Games 8, but we will definitely be working towards the biggest show to date in the SWF history.
Indeed. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's about all we have time for. Once again, thank you for tuning in and listening to the RBN Rantcast. We will have episode 5 of the Rantcast, Community Countdown number 4, several programs all in the pipeline to be put up at a later date. For Jackie Blue, The Voice, and Goldash, I am Jeff Santos. Good night. Enjoy yourselves.